Good morning, beautiful souls. So it's definitely been a very long time since I've made a video, and yet the inspiration was here this morning to kind of come to the back of our house and set up a little station so I can record a video. I've really found kind of my life has been kind of swooped and carried in a direction of constant creativity and focus on being a mom. And so, like, my time during the day is 110% dedicated to Ella. And by the time she goes to sleep, it's 100% dedicated to my function. And so, because of that, like, extra time to do other things kind of isn't there. And it's difficult to kind of step away and find that space to make a video. But I've always said since the second I picked up the camera that whenever I'm meant to and whenever I'm inspired to, I'm going to. So it's definitely been a process of not forcing myself to do something that I'm not supposed to do and just trusting the entire process. And in the last 2 weeks, I've had so many of you reach out to me and just say thank you and, you know, offer me ideas of what I could possibly do as videos, and just mention that they're doing their own groups of A Course in Miracles and just sharing their healings and their joys and their gratitude with me. And I just want to extend the gratitude right back. Like, these videos are for you and for me and for the sonship, and I'm so grateful to be able to have a camera to even share this to the world and a voice to share this with the world. And I learned just as much through this process as you guys. So I wanted to pick it up again today and say hello. And I wanted to read some parts from the Course. But before I do, I just think that I wanted to make mention that just like the first day that I picked up the camera to begin the A Course in Miracles lessons in 2013, I literally said, I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this for. I didn't even know if I was going to complete the lessons of the A Course in Miracles. I said I didn't know how long I'd be making videos, because my goal is not to be an A Course in Miracles teacher. Like, my goal is to fulfill my function on earth and to follow the voice of the Holy Spirit, the voice of love inside my own mind, and to fulfill my function. And that function has taken a view of being a mom and being the founder of a service and technology company that's going to bless the entire world. And so it's taken a really long time to dedicate our time and our efforts and to develop our skills and the way to really have a business set up that can work on a global scale. And so it's almost like my attention is really shifting into that market and into that direction. So I'm going to be a voice for global humanity and not just the A Course in Miracles students and teachers around the world. And that makes me happy, because you guys are my foundation. You guys have helped me to find the confidence in myself, to be able to trust myself, and that when I let myself be a vessel for communication, that it does happen naturally and effortlessly. And I learn just as much when I let the message pour through me as you guys say you do. And so I just kind of wanted to come back to the humble roots of, like, I don't want to place myself in a position that I'm not supposed to be. I see myself still as a learner, and I still have my lessons, believe you me, and I still have the difficulties, believe you me, but I also have found the way out. And I have found that there's correction for all mistakes. And I have seen and looked through, and I live in this state of peace and gratitude and joy that I still want for all of humanity. So I just wanted to say that even though I don't pick up the camera every day like I once did, I'm still here with you. I'm still holding your hand. I'm still doing my work. I'm still encouraging you. I still have my website up, miraclesmind.org, that I'm going to have for a long time. But I'm not sure how many more of these videos are going to be coming on the A Course in Miracles channel. So I just wanted to put that out there again, that it's open, but I feel like my channels are shifting, and Tom and I are both going to have a podcast to share similar ideas, but also including technology and scale, anything that can happen at scale. So people who want to make a difference in their lives and in their work, and we want to interview them, and we want to be interviewed, and just have a platform to really share even greater. So you're going to see a lot of similar messages, but also more in a language that a broader audience can hear and to understand, even though the underlying principles are still going to be the same, because truth is true. And so that never changes, no matter what words are being given us to use and express. So I wanted to get that out of the way. It's a little bit of a 5-minute intro, but you know, you guys are here for a reason. And I also wanted to say that I'm not going to try and speed this up and be as fast as possible. I'm just going to read and I'm just going to be carried. And I feel like I don't want to give as many of my own words on what I'm going to read here from the A Course in Miracles. I want to let Jesus speak for himself. Because this is also something that brings up a lot of discussion in the A Course in Miracles community about this idea of being creative beings and being souls and fulfilling our function here and what that means. And I think for me, I've learned that first and foremost, my function is forgiveness, yes. And once I let my mind be blessed by the power of forgiveness, I automatically look upon a world that is released and that is forgiven. And then I can't not want to, with every level of my being, a mind, body, spirit, soul, give to the world and give to humanity. Like I see need, I see quote unquote problems, but I also see answers and I also see solutions. So my job is to give those answers and to give those solutions in every single sector that I possibly can, and to help as many people as I possibly can and bless as many people as I possibly can. And in that I am helped and I am blessed and I am saved. And that is truly fundamentally my life experience every single day. And so I want this to empower brother and sister souls who see this to be like, what is my part? Am I fulfilling my part? How can I do more? How can I give more? And it's not to force action or doing on anybody, because we are saying through the Course or learning through the Course in Miracles that I need do nothing. But it is, I need do nothing of myself alone. So when the Spirit calls and asks you to go here and you feel the prompt to reach out to someone there, or you feel the inspiration to say hi to somebody on the street, like these are things that could be used to heal and to help and to bless and to strengthen the spirit in each other. And so I want this to be okay, that we listen, and if we're told to learn something, read something, develop some sort of skill or talent, that it's so that it can be used to make a difference in this planet. And like that's what we're going to need, especially with technology taking over, and we're knowing that technology is going to take a lot of jobs. The jobs that technology is not going to take away from us are those that are creativity, that are focused in creativity, that are focused in reaching the masses, in having communication with one another, and being able to hold that space to really express and heal and grow and evolve as beings. And there's so many different things that are coming up to do that, so many different jobs that are opening, and us at Makeshift are helping to contribute to opening the global market to have people to better serve and to fulfill their function. So I definitely wanted to read this part. It is 4 pages because it's from the book, but I think that that's okay. So I'm reading from the Sparkly. I really don't think that it's the same in the FIP, because this is from chapter 4, the root of all evil, and a lot has been edited out. So if you would like, I'm going to put this whole section in the links in the comments below. Feel free to reference it if that's helpful for you. You can go along if you have FIP and do your best, but the main thing that I would almost suggest, even just not even looking at the book, because it doesn't even matter about the book, it's the message from Jesus to us as souls, to just close your eyes and just take this moment to be still and to listen and to absorb this message. And I'm going to do the same as I read it, and not close my eyes per se, but as I'm reading, but I'm going to open up my heart and still my mind and let this message truly be given me from within to receive. So I join you all here. So the section is called Creation and Communication. In the text, chapter 4, the root of all evil. And so we begin. It should be clear by now that while the content of any particular ego illusion does not matter, it is usually more helpful to correct it in a specific context. Ego illusions are quite specific, although they frequently change, and although the mind is naturally abstract. The mind nevertheless becomes concrete voluntarily as soon as it splits. However, only part of it splits, so only part of it is concrete. The concrete part is the same part that believes in the ego because the ego depends on the specific. It is the part that believes your existence means you are separate. So I'm just going to kind of break this down for a minute, just because I think that it is important. Jesus is talking about that, yes, we have an abstract mind. Yes, we have an infinitely creative mind. And yes, that mind is our one mind, and it's true. But he's also saying that that it should be clear by now that any particular ego illusion does not matter, but it is more helpful to correct those ego illusions once it becomes specific. And so once ego has made a judgment of any kind, that judgment is specific. Once the ego has made a decision of any kind, that decision becomes specific. So even if it's, let's say you're in a dynamic with your partners and a partner says, you always do this, that you always do this is very specific. And what I found is if we make a list of everything that we think that we're sacrificing, everything that we think that we're missing, everything that we think we need to get, everything that we think that we need, everything that we think that we want, and kind of get out all of these ideas, we realize how specific the ego illusions are. And even though any one of them is the same, because ego illusions are ego illusions, and there is no order of difficulty in illusions, just like there is no order of difficulty in miracles, they are still needing to be looked at and healed within a very specific context. So like when I'm working with my brothers, they are often telling me their story, expressing themselves through word, and we can pick out specific words and sentences that is like the root of what it is that they're talking about. And through that specificity, the Holy Spirit can show you, well, if this is what you think is true about yourself, like if this thought is what you think is true, then what does that mean about the self that you think that you are? Right? So we start to take the specific thoughts that you think and lead it back to, well, who does that mean that you think that you are? And we will always find that that thought will either lead back to you thinking that you're an ego, a body that can be separate, or it leads back to the idea that you are united and that you are a contributor to humanity and to the sonship, and that you are an eternal soul who loves and only loves. And so when we look at our specific thoughts, that can lead us back to what we think we are. And that's where the change can happen, in the specificity of things. So let's continue. Everything the ego perceives is a separate whole, without the relationships that imply being. So Jesus always tells us that our relationships imply being, and that having and being are one. So when you are the soul, you receive everything because having and being are one. But Jesus is saying here that the ego perceives everything as a separate whole. And so it kind of like separates things out, and it seems to be a whole problem or a whole situation or a whole thing that we need to tackle. But really it's separating off from the whole to see a separate whole in itself. So ego's just really mischievous. The ego is thus against communication, because having and being who you are naturally in communication link with the Creator. You will naturally be in communication link with our brothers. But when ego decides to find something that it's going to latch onto as an idea, it literally splits off communication. So the ego is thus against communication, except insofar as it is utilized to establish separateness rather than abolish it. The communication system of the ego is based on its own thought system, as is everything it dictates. That's why we can really understand what mind people are in by what they speak. Just like with Trump, for instance. He's a perfect example. He spits out his own thinking, and if you trace those thoughts back and ask the question, who is it that he must think he is to have a thought that wants to divide and wants to hate and wants to be better than everybody else? It's a little bit clear as to what thought system he's coming from. This isn't a judgment on his being, which is what Jesus is saying. It's a recognition of the thought system, the psychology with which you are using. So the communication system of the ego is based on its own thought system, as is everything else it dictates. Its communication is controlled by its need to protects itself, and it will disrupt communication when it experiences threat. Yes, and often it disrupts the communication through anger, through outbursts, through upset, through defense. While this is always so, individual egos perceive different kinds of threat, which are quite specific in their own judgment. For example, although all forms of perceived demands may be classified or judged by the ego as coercive communication, which must be disrupted, the response of breaking communication will nevertheless be to a specific person or persons. Right? So it definitely becomes very, very specific. So it's not abstract anymore. It becomes very, very, very specific when the ego decides that what is happening is going to be something that is a threat to its own thought system. So immediately, boom, defense and attack. So to keep that thought system intact. The specificity of the ego's thinking, then, results in a spurious kind of generalization, which is really not abstract at all. You always do this. You always do that. Democrats always do this. People from other countries always do that. Judges, Muslims always do this. Christians always do that. Right? This very generalization that's not abstract, but it is segregated a separate part of the whole to judge as a way to defend against its own thought system. So instead of it being like, oh, this is my responsibility, how I think and what I see, it's your problem, right? This is the whole point of ego. So it will respond in certain specific ways to all stimuli which it perceives as related. In contrast, the soul reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else. Nor does it make any attempts to establish what is true. So basically, the truth needs no defense. It knows that what is true is everything God created. Everything God created. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation because it is in complete and direct communication with its creator. So did you get that? The reason why the soul can communicate effectively is because the soul is in perfect communication with the creator always. And the soul is in perfect communication with all that is created always. So communication is the natural way of the soul on earth. So the ego blocks communication or thinks communication isn't necessary. And the biggest one with like the A Course in Miracles or spirituality is that, there's nothing here, there's no one going on, there's only one of us. So it kind of denies this idea of having to have communication and a reciprocal relationship that goes back and forth between souls, between like minds, between shared purpose in each other, in our beings. And it literally just like kind of blocks that idea of communication with concepts. And the reason it does so is because communication presents a threat to the ego. Once you start talking out your thoughts, you expose it. And that's why I find it so helpful in a relationship with somebody like Tom or the friends that I have that I can express these things to, because you create a space that's safe for you to express what's on your mind and what's on your heart. But it also gives you a chance to see what you're thinking so that you can then correct it. But if I didn't express and I didn't communicate and I didn't write and I didn't let it come up and out, I wouldn't see it, right? You understand? So communication is a threat to the ego, but it is the power of the soul. So this communication is the will of God. This communication is the will of God. Oh my God. Creation and communication are synonymous. Creation and communication are synonymous. Probably why this brings so much joy to my heart and to my spirit is because for the last 8 years, we've been working on a communication app, and it is literally founded through creativity. It started by asking questions and having absolutely no idea at all whatsoever how we were going to do this. Day by day, the answer is given. Day by day, what the way is given. Day by day, the technology is given. Day by day, the steps are taken, and it slowly becomes manifest and becomes a complete and entire idea and product that could be served and given to help humanity to better communicate. This is communication creation at its finest, and I feel like this is my every single day experience of it, right? So Jesus is almost just like affirming that this is what is natural for all beings who know themselves to be souls and who are learning to be souls, is to give and to serve, and the answers will be given you as you ask the right questions and as you let yourself freely communicate with yourself in your inner world, with those that are around you, and even through things like this, like that I'm doing right now. It's helpful. It's really helpful. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. I'm going to read that again. God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. Since only beings of a like order can truly communicate, his creations naturally communicate with him and like him. Okay, there's been so many times where I've tried to like express this idea, and the thing is, then people are like, well, it's your thoughts, it's your idea. And a lot of the time it's like, well, no, these are God's thoughts, and it's only beings of like order that can communicate. So it can only be souls or God's children that can actually communicate, and God's children and God's souls share his mind. So it's God's minds, God's mind, it's God's thoughts, it's God's purpose, it's God's will to speak and use through us. So we'll be sharing like the same ideas and the same language, and what this does is it allows us to feel heard and to feel understood and to agree and join on ideas. And when we join on ideas, that's miracles, my friends. Okay, so like that's what we're learning to have. in our relationships with everybody. And so like this is literally a power that we have. So it's not your thoughts or my thoughts, it's our thoughts. And once we go through the lessons of the Course in Miracles and clear out and purge out everything that is not truly these thoughts, then we literally become a channel, a receptive channel that allows us to both receive and give a shared message, right? So, and we have to remember, who am I talking to? I'm talking to the soul of my brothers. So if they're not listening to their soul, they won't hear me. But if they want to listen to their soul, and they are listening to their soul, we can have glorious, healing, holy, beautiful conversations and experiences. So this communication is perfectly abstract in that its quality is universal in application, and not subject to any judgment, any exception, or any alteration. God created you by this and for this. He created you by communication and for communication. The mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with functions it was not given. That is why the mind cannot totally lose the ability to communicate, even though it may refuse to utilize it on behalf of its own being. So this is important. The mind can distort its function, but you cannot get rid of it. So even though you might feel like you don't quite know what your function is, it's not lost to you. We're just learning to reestablish the communication link between us and our Creator, and it will be given us. It will be told to us. And so like this is the whole point. Like it's always there. We just have to learn the appropriate tools to step out of the way to hear it and receive it and let it come. So existence as well as being rests on communication. Existence, however, is specific in how, what, and with whom communication is judged to be worth undertaking. Being is completely without these distinctions. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real, including the soul. To whatever extent you permit the state to be curtailed, you are limiting your sense of your own reality, which becomes total only by your recognizing all reality in the glorious context of its real relationship to you. This is your reality. Do not desecrate it or recoil from it. It is your real home, your real temple, your real self. So God's saying, don't recoil away from communication. It's hard, like to communicate with someone, especially if you've had a trigger in that relationship, especially if you've had something go down or like a mistake happen or something happen that like literally put like a wedge between you. Communication is hard. Like it takes courage, right? Like it takes jumping over the fear to actually allow the communication to happen and to heal. But when we are willing to take that step and to be willing to communicate and put ourselves out there and to share what's on our heart and mind, and then we start to have this reciprocal thing happening when we allow it, and we both understand the importance of communication, and it truly allows us to have an experience together that this is our true home, in the safety of our minds and in the safety of our relationships. Like this is our real temple, in the safety of my heart and mind, in the safety of our heart and relationship. Like this is my true self. And this is how we get to experience it when we realize, oh my God, communication and creation is where that takes place. That's why a whole new world, a whole real world will open up here. Of course, it's still the dream world. It's still a happy dream. We're still in a ball of mass spinning through space. But it's going to reflect these characteristics of communication and creation and cooperation that is the foundation of a soul. So we literally get to bring that here by living it here and understanding that these principles are where our home and our self and our temple is. So it's worth worshiping. It's worth dedicating our times and our lives and our minds to. So it says, God, who encompasses all being, nevertheless created beings who have everything individually, but who want to share it to increase their joy. So this is why he speaks of us as an individual soul as well, because we individually have to learn these principles, and then we learn that having and being are one. So when we know we are soul and we know we have everything, we automatically give everything. And this has been our experience from the beginning, that having and being are one. So I know that I have everything, and having everything doesn't mean I have all the money. It means that I have everything God has given me. So from that place of having everything God has given me, I'm going to give that. And from that, I receive everything, which includes money, which includes peace, which includes powerful relationships, which includes fulfillment of purpose and function. But we have to remember that this giving includes everything, and it is for all. So nothing that is real can be increased except by sharing it. That is why God himself created you, so that you can share it. Divine abstraction takes joy in application, and that is what it means. And that is what creation means. So let's read that again. Divine abstraction takes joy in application. So true. The joy is in the doing, guys. Joy in the application, and that is what creation means, to actually create something, to paint something, to draw something, to build some technology, to build some software, to build a rocket ship, to do whatever it is that requires you to bring what's in your mind through the form and through to here, right? Like that's a miracle also. Joy is in the abstraction. Joy is in the application, and that is what creation means. The how, the what, and the to whom are irrelevant because real creation gives everything since it can create only like itself. I have a quick story. I know this is going to be a long video, but I have a quick story. I remember when I first started all of this, before Tom was even in my life, when I was being a life coach, and I went to an event, and I signed up for some life coaching classes to improve myself, and I talked to the guy on the phone, and the guy's like, so what is your target audience? Like, what is your target market? And I'm like, everyone. Like, I want to help everyone. Like, how do I specify this to just choose a target market? He's like, no, you have to. In order to do business, you have to. And he's kind of like getting rough with me. And I'm like, you know what? Then I guess I'm not supposed to work with you. Right? Because from day one, I didn't exactly know what I was going to do. I didn't exactly know how I was going to do it. But the idea that was in my mind is that I wanted to help everyone on the face of the planet. I couldn't just specifically choose someone individually. It had to be everybody. And I feel that that's what's brought me to the place where I am, to know what my function is, to be fulfilling my function, and it be inclusive of everybody. Because that idea is where the power is. So it doesn't matter the how, the what, the who. It is for everyone. Don't get me wrong. Once you start to have a business, the global everyone does get specified to little steps to include little targets before you get to the big one, but that's another video, right? So he says, remember that in being, there is no difference between having and being, as there is in existence. In the state of being, the mind gives everything, always. This is God's law. When you are what you are, as you are a soul, as you are in the state of being, the mind gives everything, always. The Bible repeatedly states that you should praise God. Praise God. This hardly means that you should tell him how wonderful he is. He has no ego with which to accept such thanks, and no perception with which to judge such offerings. But unless you take your part in the creation, his joy is not complete, because yours is incomplete. And this he does know. He knows it in his own being, and its experience of his son's experience. The constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels are closed. And he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him. Remember this, God is our Father, we are one with him. He has given us everything. So when we block the channels of communication, that's what he knows. He doesn't necessarily know the specifics of what we have done here. That's Holy Spirit's job, and that's Jesus's job. But God does know that we've blocked the communication channel between us and him. And that's why when we open that communication channel, there's rejoicing, there's gratitude, there's a homecoming. There is this beautiful like joy that overcomes you, because it's God's joy for his son, and it's our joy for our Father. Like, this is what we want. So God has kept your kingdom for you, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it with your whole mind, okay? And your soul is synonymous with your whole mind. Even revelation is not enough, because it is communication from God. So communication from God is one thing, that will tell you what you are and what God is, and it's holy and it's undescribable and it's out of this world. But he says even that is not enough. Okay, God does not need revelation returned to him, which would clearly be impossible, but he does want revelation brought to others. So once you have this experience where you've opened the channels of communication, you let God's love in, you have this reciprocal relationship with the Creator. He doesn't need you to return that to him. He needs you to accept it, be grateful, find that joy that God has given and that you share in with him, and give it. And give it to your brothers and sisters, right? Give it to your brothers and sisters. That's how you keep it alive. That's how you make it present. That's how you don't let the revelatory experiences fall to the past. That's how you don't let the spiritual experiences fall to the past. And that's how you allow it to be ever present right here, right now. So he says, God is praised whenever any mind learns to be wholly helpful. This is impossible without being wholly harmless, because the two beliefs coexist. The truly helpful are invulnerable because they are not protecting their egos, so that nothing can hurt them. Their helpfulness is their praise of God, and he will return their praise of him because they are like him and they can rejoice together. God goes out to them and through them, and there is great joy throughout the kingdom. Every mind that is changed adds to the joy with its own individual willingness to share with it. So honestly, this is like the landing point that where I feel like we're all learning to get to is to share and to give and to extend. And so when brothers and sisters deny this very, very crucial idea of the soul's power and of God's laws, it's very, very clear what voice they're listening to. And again, that's not a judgment. It's just an awareness for yourself. A, not to take it personally. B, not to try and exhaust yourself through explaining something. But B, just to accept it for what it is and be willing to demonstrate your part, that you can have communication with our Creator, that you can fulfill your function, that you can be happy, and that what Jesus speaks of is true. That's the best way we can help others is by demonstrating it, and then God will literally go out to us and through us and let us bring this helpfulness to whomever is receptive for it and who is ever ready to receive it. And so we just have to trust that that could be anyone and everyone anywhere, and to always be ready and primed for that experience. So God goes out to them and through them, and there's great joy throughout the kingdom. Every mind that is changed adds to this joy with its own individual willingness to share in it. The truly helpful are God's miracle workers, whom I direct until we are all united in the joy of the kingdom. I will direct you to wherever you can be truly helpful and to whomever can follow my guidance through you. Exactly. So I'm just going to keep reading. We're in the section now called True Rehabilitation, but I think this is important because if we're realizing that creation and communication is what we want, that we want to be vessels of the Spirit, that we want to live life through our soul, and that we want to feel the joy of God, well, we need true rehabilitation. And so let's get through this section. It's only one page, and then we can conclude with the prayer that is offered here for us. So this says, page 90 of the Sparkly, every mind which is split needs rehabilitation. So anybody who sees any problem, anybody who slips back and forth between ego consciousness and the soul, anybody who doesn't yet know their purpose, anybody who has fear on occasion, that's everybody. Like I feel like anytime we experience fear, that's when we're in need of true rehabilitation and help. So anyone, including myself at times. The medical orientation to rehabilitation emphasizes the body, while the vocational orientation stresses the ego. So in this world, our medical field focuses on rehabilitating the body, and the psychological world, the vocational orientation, stresses the ego. Thank you, Freud. The team approach generally leads more to confusion than anything else because it is too often misused as a way of exerting the ego's dominance over other egos rather than the real experiment in the cooperation of minds. And I think that's what it is. That's the difference. That teamwork, according to the world, is competition, whereas teamwork, according to God, is cooperation. So we are learning to work together as a team towards a collective vision or goal, and that's partly where communication and creation come in, to be able to work together to cooperatively to reach the goal. Otherwise, ego just stands in the way, puts up that guard, and you can't communicate enough to even accomplish anything. So communication or cooperation goes out the window. So it continues and he says, rehabilitation as a movement is an important over the overt improvement. Rehabilitation as a movement is an improvement over the overt neglect of those in need of help, but it is often little more than a painful attempt on the part of the halt to lead the blind. So, rehabilitation, healing, spiritual therapy, that sort of thing is definitely a movement and an improvement over just neglecting our brothers who are in need and being like, they don't need anything. Everybody's healed anyway. So it's one step to be able to put yourself in that position to help other people. But he's also saying that it's quite a painful attempt to try on part of the halt, which is stopping salvation, halting it, pausing it, to lead the blind. So he says the ego is likely to fear broken bodies because it cannot tolerate them. The ego cannot tolerate ego weaknesses either without ambivalence because it is afraid of its own weakness as well as the weakness of its chosen home. So that's the foundation that ego rests upon. It's being weak. And a lot of time people will either not do anything to help people or try to do something to help people, all to either make ego feel better and less weak and less bad, so to speak, and to feel better about themselves. So we have to be conscious of what the intent is for why we want to help and what the intent is for why we think we don't need to help. So when ego is threatened, the ego blocks your natural impulse to help, placing you under the strain of divided will. You may then be tempted to withdraw, to allow your ego to recover, and to gain enough strength to be helpful again on a basis limited enough not to threaten your ego, but too limited to give you joy. Those with broken bodies are often looked down on by the ego because of its belief that nothing but a perfect body is worthy as its own temple. A mind that recoils from a hurt body is in great need of rehabilitation itself. All symptoms of hurt need true rehabilitation, and whenever they are met with this, the mind that so meets them heals itself. Oh my God. Let's just pause there for a second, because Jesus is talking about, like, he needs us to go to places where it's needed the most, and that will mean hurt bodies. Just like Jesus went to those who had leprosy, that will mean those who are physically ill. Just like the man who was taken to him, who said he was paralyzed because of his parents' sins. Like, we have to be willing to be taken to these places where people need us the most, and that means you're going to be faced with hurt bodies and sick minds. And Jesus is saying that if you're recoiling away from that, and there's something inside yourself that's saying, no, either it's not needed, or no, I don't need to do that, or whatever story you're telling yourself, you are keeping that healing away from you. But he's also saying that all symptoms of hurt need helpfulness. So it doesn't matter how small or how big. And whenever they are met with this helpfulness, the mind that so meets them heals itself. So when someone is asking for help, and you meet them with the idea of helpfulness without judgment, what happens is the mind that needed the help heals itself. So it's not even like you're doing anything. You're literally just holding the space for gratitude for God that they can heal through the Holy Spirit. And they do when they really want it. So he's saying rehabilitation is an attitude of praising God as he himself knows praise. Exactly. Gratitude to God. Praise God. He offers praise to you, and you must offer it to others. So we must praise them and look past their bodies and see their beautiful souls, and let their souls come alive by empowering that. The chief handicaps of the clinicians lie in their attitudes to those whom their egos perceive as weakened and damaged. By these evaluations, they have weakened and damaged their own helpfulness, and have thus set their own rehabilitation back. Rehabilitation is not concerned either with the ego's fight for control or its need to avoid and withdraw. You can do much on behalf of your own rehabilitation and that of others if, in any situation calling for healing, you think of it this way. So he's saying anytime you recognize a situation that needs help and healing, think of it this way. Whether you're in a fight with your partner, whether you have a conflict at work, whether you have you see someone on the street who's needing help, whether you feel called to a place to go that you've never been to before and you feel a little bit of fear, he says you can do much on behalf of your own rehabilitation and that of others if in a situation calling for healing you think of it this way. So let's sit with this prayer for a minute. Okay, it says, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Christ who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. The power of this prayer, beautiful souls, places you in the position of being most truly helpful to our brothers and sisters, which is also you being most truly helpful to yourself. And what this requires is a recognition that what you need is gratitude to God and a willingness to go wherever he would have you go. Because he needs us. He needs us to open up our communication channels to hear him and be blessed. He needs us to take that blessing and give it to our brothers. This is literally our only function here and the only use of our time. And definitely we are all needing to exist here, and that requires things like money and houses and food and all these things. But we have to remember that if we are this being, the soul that God says we are, and that if having and being are one, then we're going to have to let ourselves have the experience that we've been given everything, and let the fear of maintaining the old wants go, And we will always, 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 always have exactly what we need. Always. Okay, the wants come later. It's not about what we want, because what we really want is peace. What we really want is healing. Like, what we really want is to be happy. So it's not all these things that we want. So we can let some of those go and realize that that's not where our happiness and peace was anyway. And so it may appear like this letting go, like this sacrifice, like this having to, not have what you really want to follow God. But that's not the case at all whatsoever. Okay? Like, loss is not part of God's plan. Abundance is. And it's first abundance of the soul and of the spirit. And when you give it, it's going to come back to you. So God's saying, let's be truly helpful, beautiful souls. So I'm going to read this one prayer one last time. We're going to be quiet together. Take this into our hearts and then go about our days. To bless and be blessed. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent Christ who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because He who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever He wishes, knowing He goes there with me. I will be healed as I let Him teach me to heal. And so it is. Thank you, beautiful souls. Share this video, like this video, comment on this video, give the message of this video to those that are around you in meditation and in your family and in your life and on your street, and ask God where He would have you be today, because this is how we bring about salvation, brother and sister souls, to save and be saved. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day.